Hi guys, welcome to today's brush party. We are going to paint this lovely painting, which I think is just called Ice Cream, but it's a really lovely one to paint. I know it looks a bit tricky, but it's a really nice straightforward process. So we're going to start with the background and we'll build up the layers nice and slowly until you end up with something like this one. And obviously you're welcome to do like your own flavor sauce. You can do a different color ice cream, so feel free to change it up as much as you want to. So on your palettes you are going to need these colors. So I've got white and black, and then yellow, blue and red, and you might want another palette for mixing just in case you get messy. So 2 palettes would be great. And then we've got some water as well, so just a jar of water to rinse off your brushes, and a bit of tissue to clean off those brushes as well. Now, in terms of what brushes to use, you can just use 3 brushes. So we've got the larger brush like this. This is going to be mostly for the background. Then a smaller version of that brush for the medium details, and then you definitely want a small brush for the smaller details on top of that, like these tiny details in the cone. So yeah, we're going to start with the sky, blend it down into the water and then into the sand. So I'm going to start with the larger brush. I'm going to dip it in the water, and we're going to go straight from the water onto the palette. So I'm going to take some white paint and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of blue. So here's the white. I'm going to take some of that over to a clean part of the palette, and I'm going to pop a little bit of blue into it. So I want the sky to look quite light on mine, so I'm going to use less blue than white. So you want lots and lots of white mixed in together. And then squish that brush down side to side to make sure you've got a nice even amount of paint on both sides of the brush. Once you've got a nice light blue, we're going to hold the brush so you've got the long bristles pointing upwards. Or if you just have a normal like flat brush, then just hold it so that all the bristles are sort of lining up vertically like this. And then we're going to go side to side from the top of the canvas. Just flick myself in the eye with the paint. I think mine was maybe just a little bit too light. But we're just going side to side like this, starting from the top and just gradually working our way down the painting until we get to about 1/3 of the way down. So what that means is that you want to sort of section your canvas into 3 sections. So we've got the light blue in the top section, the darker blue in the middle, and then the yellowy orange towards the bottom. So we'll just go somewhere around there for now. So take that to about there. I'd say it's probably about 1/3, maybe a little bit lower. Maybe about there. And if you want to make the sky any darker, I would actually only really make it darker towards the top. So I'm going to just go a little bit darker. So you want the bottom of that sky to just be a little bit lighter than the very, very top. So just a couple of brush strokes like this. And you want it to blend. So the best way to blend is just to go over what you've done and then slowly move the brush downwards and back up again and back down again. So you can see the pattern. So from there, we are going to make the colour a lot darker for the water. Now it's quite a blurry background, so the ice cream looks really in focus. So we're going to do a little bit of blending between all the sections. So I'm just popping in a bit more blue than before, like this. And you want to do it while the first layer is still a little bit wet. So I'm starting underneath that colour first. And then once a lot of the paint has come off of the brush, I'm going to slowly move it upwards so that it overlaps the sky. And you get a nice fuzzy horizon line. So that's where the sky meets the water. Ideally, you want this to be quite straight. That's usually quite ideal. And if you need to go for a bit of white onto your brush to blend it a little bit more, then you can do. Trying to work out what side is higher. This side definitely needs to be a bit higher. I'm not very good at doing straight lines. That's a bit better. And then we're going to bring that dark colour down. So you can carry on with your darker blue again, and that's going to fill that middle third. So that's coming down to about here. And I'm going to fill that in. As soon as the paint starts to go a little bit dry, then just pop a bit more water back into the paint. So it's very, very hot today. So my paint is drying out very quickly on the brush. So I'm constantly having to dip it back into the water. So I'm taking a little bit of blue back into that colour. I accidentally added yellow into my blue and I don't want to do that. So I've had to go on to another new part of the palette and mix up more of that colour. So we've got a nice big bit of water. Like this. And then, just like we did with the sky, we need to add a bit of white at the bottom of the water. So rinse off the brush and try and get all of that dark blue out. Just use a little bit of white paint. Now this is a really important bit because if you put blue directly sort of next to or on top of yellow, or yellow on top of blue, it goes very, very green. So you want the white in there to just stop it from going really, really bright green. So that is just going along there. Now you want to take that white down fairly far because, again, you want that to blend nicely. And then we just need to let this dry for a minute or two before we put the sand in because it just works much, much better when it is dry. So a really good way to dry your canvas is to take it off of the easel and waft it around a bit. So you want to just sort of give it a good flap about, literally like this, so that it becomes nice and dry for the next section. So yeah, while you're drying your canvas, you can clean off your brush lots and lots of times because we're going to go to that yellow next. And it's not just neat yellow. We are actually going to add a little bit of red into it and a bit of white as well. So it just goes like a slightly more peachy sand colour rather than like a bright lemon yellow. So give yourself a bit of time for that to dry. You might need to blow on it or use a hairdryer if it's not quite as hot where you're painting. So hairdryer if you need to. And then we can start mixing up the colour for the sand. So we're going to take a little bit of yellow, place it onto a new part of the palette, somewhere around here. I'm going to take a tiny, tiny bit of red, so you get a really pale orange colour. And then into that, we can add a big chunk of white. So we end up with a nice light orange colour. Then we're going to start right at the bottom this time. I think I need a bit more white. There we go. We're going to start right at the bottom and we're going to fill up to where our white is underneath the blue. And then we're going to add more white to the brush for our blending. So I still think mine is really, really yellow, so I'm going to add more white all over. It's a little bit better. So you can see where I've got a really strong line here between the sand and the blue. We don't really want that. We want it to sort of look like the waves are coming on top of the sand. So I'm going to clean up my brush a little bit, just trying to get it nice and fresh. And I'm going to use lots of white again, a little bit of that sand colour. And we're going to just gradually work our way upwards until we get a little bit more of a softer blend. Like this. And what's nice is that you can just go backwards and forwards between your colours until you're happy with it. So if you end up doing too much white like I've done, what I can do is go back to just a bit more of that blue colour. Like this, and just blend it a little bit. This is probably the hardest part of the painting, is getting that little bit of blend between all three sections. Once we've done that, the ice cream is actually a lot easier than you think it's going to be, which is nice. We'll do a bit more blue just around here. And then I am going to put the brush down because I get really carried away with paintings and I don't want to get carried away. So I think that's quite nice at the moment. When you have done the sand and it's all dried, we can then make the colour for the ice cream cone, which is basically the colour that we've used for the sand, but we're going to add a few other colours in it to make it a bit better. So we're going to add a little more red into it, a bit more yellow, So you want it to go a bit more orangey. And then a little bit of black. So when you add the black, it might go a bit green like that. We don't really want a green ice cream cone, so you want to add a bit more red, like this. Oh, not too much red. And then a bit more white back in, like this. You kind of make it darker and then make it lighter again. So you want to aim for like this really pale brown colour. It's going to be good. And then once you've got this colour, we're going to put the shape in. So we'll start with the middle line, just a straight line going down the centre, and then we'll shape it after that. So you want to start about halfway down the canvas and right in the middle of your water, so somewhere about here. And I'm going to do a dot where I want the top of the cone to go, and another dot directly in line with that, but right at the bottom of the page, canvas, almost right at the bottom, and then we're going to join that together. So we've got a centre line. It makes it much easier when you've got a middle line to sort of work from. So from there, we can just make the bottom a bit wider. So we're going to start with like a bigger triangle. So twist your brush. Sorry, I didn't even say what brush we're using. We're going to use the middle brush for this bit. You can use the big brush if you like though, but I've used my medium-sized brush. And that line I did with my long bristles pointing up. And now we're going to start from the bottom. We're going to turn it upside down. And we're going to open it out so that it's just like a V shape like this. Just making it a little bit bigger every time you do the brush stroke. You don't want to go too big, too early. And then fill it in as you go because it just makes it much, much easier. And then just on the sides at the top here, we're going to add in, see these like curved lines? We're going to just gradually, so just one step at a time, add the curve in. So you want to go a little bit wider at the top and then just swoop it in like that. Now I want to have a lot of ice cream on my cone, so I need to make mine quite big. Go, and then same on the other side. So just pulling it out a little bit, pulling it in. That is gradually making it a little bit bigger every time we work on the brush strokes. It's really hard to do it symmetrical when I'm sideways to the canvas. Just a little bit more. I think this side could do being a little more curved like that. And this one I'm just going to do it too. Just make sure you fill that in as you go. Right, I've made mine absolutely massive now, but that's fine. And then just along the top, just so we can neaten up all of those brush strokes, we're going to do a nice big arch shape so it gets taller in the middle and goes lower on the sides. There we go. So you might want to just waft your canvas again, blow on it, do what you can to get it a little bit more dry. And make sure you've got a bit more white on your palette. So if you've run out of white, now's a good time to top up with a bit more paint. But you can spend a bit of time just getting those edges really nice and crisp and even. When you're happy with your ice cream cone and it's nice and dry, we can start placing the ice cream on top. So now we've got the decision on what flavour ice cream we're doing. I'm going to stick with just bog standard vanilla. I'm going to just do white all the way on this and then the red sauce on top. If you want to do chocolate, you can do chocolate, you can do strawberry, you can do any sort of colour you like. So we need to start by just doing a nice thick bit of white paint along the top of our ice cream cone. Mine still hasn't quite dried yet, so I don't want to go over the top of my cone just in case it ends up smudging. So if you're still waiting for yours to dry a little bit, this is a really good way just to get started, but you haven't got to overwork it or ruin it. So once we've done a nice big thick white line across the top, we're going to add the swirly bits to it. So on this right hand side, so over here, I'm just going to add one big swoop that comes up and down, almost like a little wave, sort of going round and back on itself. And you can fill that in like that. On the left hand side, so this side over here, it does sort of droop down the side of the cone slightly, so we can sort of curve that down. We will end up adding the drip over the top later, but for now we're just doing everything around the cone. So you can do the similar sort of thing. So it just droops down the side, and then you can swoop it upwards and join it back in. So you've just got two big curved lines on top of your cone. And then as we work our way upwards, we're just going to get smaller and smaller. So they're going to get closer together until we get to the point at the top. Now this one's kind of leaning a little bit towards this side. So I'm going to do a little curve on the left, just a bit smaller than the one we did before. And we can take that all the way across. And same sort of thing on the other side. Even closer in. And drop it down again. So we're just doing one side then the other. Like little spirals. And you can just keep filling it in as you go. And then we're just going to add some wobbly lines till we get to the top. So just give it a little wiggle, like that, and fill it in. We'll add the shadows and things a bit later on, which will make it really obvious, all the layers and stuff. So we'll add that a little bit later. But for now, we can put the middle brush down, and we're going to use a small brush, and we're going to go back to the cone, get that all finished, and then we'll add all the other details on the ice cream on top. But that does need a bit of time to dry. So into the brown colour we had before, we're going to take a bit of black and mix it in with a small round brush. Give it a good twist into your paint. Maybe add just a bit more water if it's starting to go a bit dry. And then from the bottom of the cone, we're going to add these stripes. Ooh, ignore that dot. I'll get rid of that in a minute. We're going to add the stripes that go up the cone. So we're going to do one going along that left edge. So just go nice and slowly with the brush. Try not to press too hard. Nice and small. Then we've got another one next to it. So they all join up into a point at the bottom, but they just get a bit further apart from one another. Oh, and we're only going up to where the thick part of the cone is. We're just doing the triangular bit at the moment, so don't worry about this top bit. And then we're going to do one, one in the middle. So you're welcome to do it from the top and go down if that's easier for you. And then two more on this side. So we have 5 lines in total. If you find it easier, you're welcome to sort of start in the middle and then do the 2 either side, but don't worry too much if you haven't done that. And don't worry if you don't fit 5 in either. You can just have 3. You can have 1 in the middle and then some on the side. So the top section is very similar. However, what we're going to do is add an arch first, like we did for the top of the cone. So I'm just going to do a nice big arch, joining up all those lines together. And in the top of the cone, we're going to do another arch. So just below the top, we'll do another one. And you can do as many of those along the top as you like. I've gone for 2. So from there, once you've done the arch across the top and then 2 more or 3 more along the very, very top, we can then add these nice curved lines that go across. So I'm leaving a little bit of a space between each line. And on the left side, they're going to curve down and in, and curve down and in. So we've got 3 curved lines on the left, and we're going to do the same sort of thing on the other side. So I'm going to do this one, but going the opposite way. So I'm going to start further out from the outside first, start from the outside, curve it in. It's exactly the same, just like a mirror image. So it's exactly the same with this side flipped onto that side. 1, 2. And the last one joins into a point in the middle. It's starting to come to life now, isn't it? Which is quite nice. And then you're welcome to do a really cool pattern. So you can do like lots of X's all the way down all of these gaps, and that just makes it look a bit more realistic. I'll bring that a bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. So just sort of coming down, and you can overlap them a little bit. There's little stripes and diagonal lines. And also in the cone bit as well down here. You might only go about halfway down the cone because you can't do this, well, I can't physically do this tiny little bits down here. I'm going to leave those bits. So when you've done all of those X's in your cone, just give it another minute or 2 to dry. I know there's lots of like little bits that we need to let dry, but what we're going to do next is add the ice cream droopy bits over the top, just to add a bit more shape, and we'll add the shadows. So I'm going to go for a bit more white on the brush, and just along the top here, in a few places, so that on the side, I'm going to add a big swoop that comes over the top, like that. And then another nice droopy bit in the middle. And then we've got a really big one on the left-hand side, which joins into this over here. So I'm going to bring that right across that corner. Just a little bit more paint over the top. There we go. And then we've got a bit of a drip coming off of this one. So a good way to do that is either with the big brush, like the medium brush, or your small brush. I don't really mind which one you use. But just sort of hanging off the bottom of this point here, we're going to add one more drip. So just a little speck with your brush. You can just dot it on. And I think I'm going to make this side a bit bigger. I want that to sort of curve around a bit more. That's a little bit better. So you're welcome to adapt the shape. So you can change any bits that you want to sort of make a bit brighter, or change the shape, or anything like that. Now is a good time to do that. So mine was a little bit see-through, so I'm literally just doing white pretty much all over now, just for a slightly brighter layer. I fancied a bit more ice cream, so I just added a bit more towards the top. Right, I'm going to stop for that now. So rinse off the brush. You want to go back to a smaller brush. Actually, while we're using the white, we can use that to add the highlights in the cone. So add your white highlights to the middle parts of all of these little details in your cones. So we're going to start by adding a little dash from the middle arch like this. We're going to do a little flick to the right and a little flick to the left. So I'm trying to leave the sides nice and dark. And then we're just going to go from the bottom of these flicks at the top like this. So add a little bit of highlight. And the key with that is to just lift your brush off the canvas nice and quickly. So you get a nice blend. And then you can do a couple coming down the middle. So we've got that, remember those lines that we did in our triangle? You can do a dash down there. Like that. So it just sort of fades off as you get further down. And if there are any X's that you want to go over with some white, you can add those in too. That looks quite nice. Especially in the middle bit there. And there's a nice bit of highlight just along the top, like that. And off the brush again. And we can go back to some shadows in our ice cream, so that actually has a little bit of time to dry. So the shadows for the ice cream is just a little bit of blue, a little bit of black, and some white. So it's like a blue-grey colour that we're aiming for here. I might do it on a new part of the palette so you can see the colour that I'm trying to make. So white, blue, and black. If you don't want it too dark, you just want it a little bit darker than the white, really. So I've got something a bit like this. And what we're going to do is put this anywhere where there's a big curve in the ice cream. So for example, right in here, there's a nice big curve, so I'm going to use that to go around the edge. And you see how that's just made it look like it's a bit more 3D, it looks a bit more realistic. I've added that down there. I'm still using a small brush, by the way. And we can actually carry this blue line pretty much all the way along there, along the top of the cone. And then we've got this nice big swoop here. So this top curve, we're going to do, as soon as we get to this bottom bit, I'm going to do a nice big diagonal line that comes down and joins in with that middle bit. So now it looks like this is a whole new layer. Then we can start on the left side and do exactly the same, but going up the way. So I'm starting from the bottom of that curve, and I'm going to sweep it upwards. So you can really take your time with this. There is no rush whatsoever. This is just a nice way to build up a bit more of a realistic pattern. So yeah, on the smaller ones, it's exactly the same thing. So you might have a couple more little flicks. Going up the sides here. Almost like I'm ticking it, almost like a little rounded tick going upwards. And a few on the right side as well. So to make it look like there's a bit coming down the front, what you can do is on this one, about halfway across, you can do another little curve. It just makes it look like the ice cream is nice and sort of coming down the front bit. Okay. So you don't want to do too much because you want to kind of save all the detail really for the sauce that's going on top. So I'm not going to do too much more, but I do think I can maybe do a little bit more down the bottom here. And a bit more on this side. There we go. I added another little wiggle going across the middle bit there. Right, we're on to the last two bits, and all that is to add the dark brown flake in the top and the dark brown shadows in the ice cream cone. Oh, and then the chocolate sauce. how many bits left? Three bits left. So I'm going to go back to my dark brown, or my brown colour from before. I'm going to add a little black to it. If your colour has dried up, the best thing to do is to mix yellow, red and black together. So you want the darkest brown that you can make, like a really rich dark chocolate brown. Like this. So I'm going to start with the cone, I think, and then do the flake on top. So where we've got the shadows from before, we can just make some of them a little bit darker to make them stand out a bit more. So on the side of the cone, over here, we can just go and make them just a tiny bit darker. So you can do really small brush strokes if possible. And a little bit on the next one, right next to the highlight that we added. And same one, the next one. Just getting a bit smaller every time we get towards the middle. So on the outside, this one's not got as much because this is the side that's highlighted. Just a smaller dash over here. And just along the arch, along the top here, we can add a little bit of a shadow going across. That makes them stand out a bit more. And then in the bottom, we can make all this really dark. And just bring those shadows to the sides. Like that. So we're adding the shadows on the edges, starting at the bottom. And I'm going to fill the bottom bit in, I think, with just a little bit of the dark brown. Like that. So going back to the top again, we're going to underline those arches that we did right at the top. I'm going to do a little brush stroke going on there, just adding a nice underline. Nice and slowly. And on the other one as well. Okay, so what makes it look really realistic and makes it look like the ice cream is actually in front of the cone, or like overlapping the front. Like what we did with the blue shadow, we can actually go underneath the ice cream with this dark shadow. So just following the bottom line of your ice cream, add this little shadowy colour. Add a little bit, just coming down on the top there. I might do a little bit more on this side, so I'm just going to add a bit more shadow on some of those X's coming down. There we go. So on the left-hand side of our stem, we can go over some of those X's. Maybe a few on the next one, but not so many in the middle. And same with the top half as well. Okay, I'm going to stop there with the ice cream cone. I think that's pretty much done. I don't want to overdo it. And we can carry on with that same colour and add our chocolate flake in. So that is sitting just in this top corner of our ice cream, sticking out towards the top right corner of the canvas. Like this. Now you can have the flake as big or as small as you like, and I love flakes so much, so I'm going to do mine quite big. That is one of my favourite chocolates. I don't think you can beat it in the top of an ice cream. So I've just done a nice big rectangle coming out the top. And if you add a slight jaggedy line to it, it makes it look a bit more like a flake. So you have a bit more of a wobbly top. And hopefully now everything has fully dried in the cone and in the ice cream, because the very last bit is to choose the colour sauce that we want to add. I'm going to stick with strawberry because, again, you can't beat it. Strawberry ice cream is strawberry flavour sauce is so nice on top of ice cream. And all you need is a bit of bright red. If you're going to do the same colour as me, you want bright red, and I'm going to start at the top, and we're just going to add these wiggles coming down. And when I say wiggles, they're more like little curvy lines that join up in a few places. And if you're unsure where to do them, if you start at the top and just do a few that flow with the shape of the ice cream, like where you've done the bumps and things, and kind of go down with where you've done the bumps. There's a little bit of a bump on this left side, so I'm going to do another little bit. Curves round as if it's just sitting on top. I'm using my small brush so that I can really get all those curves in nice and easily. So on this side here, I want it to look like the ice cream is nice and round. So there's actually sauce coming from behind the ice cream and coming round to the front. So you need to add that on the side. Don't worry, if you get some thick and then thin bits, it makes it look even more realistic. So really don't worry about the lines being absolutely perfect or thin. And the more randomness is, the nicer it's going to look. And then coming down from the sides. You can literally just do squiggles all over it. You could do it so it sort of flows with the, like just coming from one side to the other like that. But I want mine really messy. So I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to place it on, roughly following the shapes, but not worrying too much if it doesn't quite flow in exactly the same way. Ooh, another thing you can do is add little specks. Like we did with the drip down here, there might just be a few bits where it's sort of dripped. So you can have those little bits just coming off the ice cream. And like these droopy bits down here, there's loads of paint on the brush. So anyway, you've got a nice curve, you can just add more gloopy droop paint to it. And load it sort of going into the flake. I've got lots of ice cream on this bottom one as well. I'm just adding a really lovely squiggly line, not really thinking about it too much. And then there's a couple of bits on this side over here. It's just a swirly pattern. Really doesn't matter what this bit looks like, so you can have as much or as little sauce as you like. And I think if I was an ice cream person, I would literally just put it everywhere. So I'm not going to worry about it being neat at all. It looks more authentic. So clean off your brush, and if you would like to add any final highlights or anything, now's a good time. You can literally go over any bits that we've gone over so far. One thing I'm thinking is that this bit here on mine is looking really brown, where my ice cream cone was still quite wet. So on my shadows, I'm just going to add a bit more over the top because I don't really want brown shadows on my ice cream, I want blue shadows. There we go. If you want to add some like lighter highlights to your flake as well, you can just go back to your brown and add some white to it. And you can do, like we did in the cone down here, you can do some stripes so coming down from the top. Make it look like the sun is hitting the top of the flake. I want mine to be a little more orange. Mine's very, very dark. That looks a little bit better. I'll just add a bit more red and yellow with the highlights. So that is everything for our ice cream painting. So the final step is to add your signature or your initials. And I always think it looks nice in one of those bottom corners. And once you've signed it and dated it, you want to put it straight up on that wall and be proud of your wonderful artwork. I really hope that it was a nice process. I hope you enjoyed doing it. And yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you all again very soon. Bye.